Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on implementing high availability solutions with Windows Server 2019. We are in section 6 of the course, and in this video we are going to discuss about performing a live migration, quick migration and storage migration. So let's get on to the lab and get started. Now, back on our management workstation here, first of all, let's start with a review of what you already know about migration of virtual machines. Well, basically, we've been through the process of migrating virtual machines from one host to another with two independent hosts. Now here we are going to basically move a VM between the two nodes of a cluster because we already know that we have already a VM running in our cluster, and that's the purpose of having VMs running on a cluster, to be able to fail over to another node whenever needed. Now, that's not necessarily if your host just dies. Maybe you want to just perform a drain of the nodes. You want to move all the VMs from a node to be able to upgrade it or shut it down for maintenance or whatever reasons you might have. So if we go here to our cluster 2 roles, we can see that we have VM2 running, and the owner node is cluster 1. Basically, it's running on cluster 1. Now, probably the most interesting process of migrating a VM was with two independent hosts, because here it's quite simple. If we want to migrate this VM, we just need to right click it, go to the move menu, and then as you can see, we have two options: live migration and quick migration. Now, really, the difference here is in that the way Hyper-V has been implemented in older versions, because in older versions you didn't quite actually have a really live migration, so the machine would continue to stay online. Technically, the quick migration here is faster than a live migration, but the difference between the live migration is that when you do a quick migration, at some point the VM goes offline for a moment as you transfer some of its contents from one node to another. With the live migration, the VM continues to stay offline and interoperate with the outside world during the whole migrating the VM. Now, probably you'll do a live migration more often in your production environment. So you just go to live migration. Let's select a node. Of course, I can move it to the cluster 2 node, to the other node, and hit OK here. Now, as you can see, the process has already started, and the virtual machine continues to run and interoperate with the outside world as we go through this process of live migrating. Now, this should be done in a few moments. Here we go. It's done, and as you can see, the machine is still running. Now, the other option, and maybe it's the more, let's say, intrigued option, is when you have the need to perform a storage migration. So if we go here to our other cluster, to our S2D cluster, and right-click on VM1, go again to the Move options, you can see that we have a an option here to migrate virtual machine storage. If we click on this, it actually brings up a wizard in which you could add a share on which you want to migrate this virtual machine storage. You can expand and select one of the shares here, or folders in which you might to migrate the VM storage. Again, this wizard, to be honest, is kind of limited. As you can see, you don't have an option to create a different folder. You don't have several other options to specify here, but just to select the location where you want to migrate it. Now, I'm not going to go through this process, and rather than this, I want to cancel out of this and show you PowerShell way to do it, because in my opinion, and as a best practice recommended, it's really much more simpler and much more granular than this wizard here in our failover cluster manager. So I'm not going to go through the process of migrating a machine, but I just want to show you this commandlets here. So the first one I want to talk about is the move VM commandlet. This one is used for live migration. And as you can see, it has a whole set of parameters here that you can use. You can go through this web page. I'll include it in this video's resources. And what we probably are most interested in is the examples part of the commandlet here. And if I just click here on examples, here we go. You can see that you can move VM, test VM being the name of the VM, and to the remote server specified. You can include the storage of the VM and specify a destination path, and so on. You can see that you have here several other examples which you can play with. Now, the other commandlet is the move VM storage commandlet. And this is basically the correspondent of what we've just seen with the wizard in the failover cluster manager. Now, again, it has a whole lot of parameters here, but if we just go to the examples part here, we can see that move VM storage, you can select the destination storage path, you can select the actual virtual machine's path, and you can include the snapshot file path to move along with the virtual machine storage, and so on. A lot of parameters, as I said here. Now, what I want you to do, because I don't think it's worth it to actually demonstrate the process, because it's just running a PowerShell commandlet and it would move the VM storage as I explained. But you can go in your virtual environment and play a little bit with this commandlet, specifying different set of parameters each time, so you can see exactly how this works.